you a one-sided player or a two-sided player? Have you ever wondered why your racket wears on one side of the frame? If you take a look at this frame, how it's worn at the 10 o'clock area right here, and then if you flip the racket around this way, there's hardly any wear on this side. That's usually attributed to low backhand volleys or slices. When you come down low and you're trying to get the balls down here, you're probably a one-sided player. Have you ever wondered why your strings break more frequently than other players? It's mainly attributed to excessive spin on the forehands and on serves, but it could be that you're a one-sided player. So what is the difference between a one-sided player and a two-sided player? A two-sided player can basically get in a ready position, twirl the racket around, and use the racket however it ends up in their palm. A one-sided player will get in the ready position and always have to have that same side of their grip in the palm of their hand, and that's a one-sided player. Now that I've identified what a one-sided player and a two-sided player is, there are actually three types of one-sided players that I wanted to explain. And again, the one-sided player is the one that has the excessive wear at the top of the head on one side of the frame. So the first type of player, we're going to call that player feel. That type of player will grip their racket in the palm of their hand based on the feel of how it is in their hand. So if you look very carefully at a typical grip that's wrapped, one side, there's usually one side it's less tapered than the other. You can see how this side is less tapered than the other side that has a slight bump. So whether it's a side that they want the bump in their palm or the other side, they're gonna go by feel. So that's the first type of player. Right, so for a feel type of player, one way that you can balance out the wear on the top of the head is every time you regrip the racket, and if they don't replace the replacement grip, I would just go ahead and do it every so often anyway. But basically what you're going to do is trick the player into holding the racket, well, the same way, with either the bumpy side or the less tapered side in the palm of their hand, but basically you're going to move it to the other side of the racket. So what I mean by that is, if you take off the replacement grip, pay attention to where you started the grip, so the wrap of the grip. So in this case, you'll notice that the butt cap is down, and that's where I started the grip when I installed this grip. So what you want to do the next time you regrip the racket is go ahead and flip your racket around and make sure you start with the butt cap up. So you're going to just make sure that your grip starts up there. If your grip happens to start at, let's say, bevel number 1 or 5, then just make note of that and then just flip it over to the opposite side. So again, that's going to trick the player into holding the racket the same way that they normally like to, but now you're going to even out the wear. Now, as far as the excessive, the frequency of stringing, that cannot be helped, because if the player is always holding it on one side of the racket, the grip, they're always going to be hitting their forehands and their serves on the same side of the string bed. So, as you know, those are the two shots that take the most, that the strings take the most wear. So, unfortunately, you can't remedy that problem. All right, the second type of one-sided player, we're going to call this player strings, because basically what they're doing is, in this case, if they have a stencil on their strings, they're probably the type of player that's getting in their ready position and looking at the orientation of the stencil and then getting their racket held in their hand the same way all the time. So what's going to happen is, again, it's not going to alleviate the problem of them hitting their forehands and their serves on one side of the string bed, but what will happen is if you reverse the stencil the next time, so what I mean by that is, you notice how the stencil is facing this way with the butt cap facing down. So next time what you would do is make sure that you start the stencil with the butt cap up. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, now we have the third type of one-sided player, and we're going to call this player frame. And there's a couple of ways that this player might be holding their racket in the palm of their hand the same way. They might be looking at a label on the racket. It could be a sticker that's on the frame, like in this case it's right in there. So they might be looking at it, holding it that way and getting ready. So there is a remedy to this. What you could do is the next time you string the racket, you can see how the labels are on one side with the butt cap down. You could actually put the labels on the opposite side with the butt cap up if you're the stringer and you use labels. So, or sometimes they might have a favorite sticker on the racket. So if they're their own personal sticker, then that might be a touchy situation. So you might want to ask that player if you want to just switch it over. The other frame type of player is the one that's looking at cosmetics on the frame. So I'll bring this racket up. This is the one that has the excessive wear on that one side. So for this particular player, he's holding it so he can always see that in his ready position versus that graphic. So he's holding it with this side up and in the ready position like that. And guess what? When you're hitting the backhand slice or low volleys, that's a side of the frame that's exposed, and that's where all the wear is coming from. So this type of player, the frame, when they're looking at cosmetics, there's no remedy for it. In summary, I just wanted to mention that a two-sided player will have more even wear on their strings and their racket because of the fact that that type of player can hold their racket on either side. Whereas a one-sided player will always have more wear because of the fact that they're hitting their forehands and their serves on the same side of their string bed, not to mention the wear on the top of the head due to low backhands and volleys. Now, I did mention some tips that will help with racket wear if you're a one-sided player, so hopefully that helps. But there's no tips in improving or extending the life of your string if you're a one-sided player. So the only remedy to that is becoming a two-sided player. So hopefully these tips help, and thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you'd like to read more articles about racket stringing and tips, check out the International Alliance of Racket Technicians. Or if you want to become a USRSA certified stringer or master racket technician, I provided the links below so you can check it out there. Thanks for watching, happy hitting, and let your strings play!